Hi everybody, welcome to today's podcast. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We kind of like the idea of doing the unsolved cases a little bit more than the already sort of solved and established cases. We will still do those, but I feel like it's really important to revisit a lot of the unsolved cases, especially in Canada, because you rarely even hear of them at all. So this year is the 45th anniversary of the unsolved disappearance and murder of Theresa Allore. Easter weekend 1979, the body of a 19-year-old student washed up under a bridge on the shore of a river near Sherbrooke, Quebec. Theresa Allore was the oldest of 3 children in the Allore family, who resided in suburban Montreal. Theresa's parents described her as exciting, adventurous, and full of energy. Her friends described her as bubbly, friendly, and very smart. People couldn't say enough nice about her, really. In 1978, Theresa, 19 years old, and her brother, 18 years old, were enrolled at Champlain College, which was a boarding school in Lennoxville, Quebec. Their family, so the parents and the baby of the family, John, moved to New Brunswick. And Theresa and her brother really wanted to stay behind and finish their education in Quebec, so they ended up going to the same boarding school together. So the residences for that school were located 14 kilometers away from the campus in the rural area of Compton. And those residents contained hundreds of students. Outside appearances made it seem as though it was structured, strict, and safe. In reality, the residents were like one big party, as there was no supervision for these students. And
that's, even just in general, the residences are a long way from the school. They're like 14 kilometers. That's quite a way. I mean, it's long enough. It
is, and that distance kind of comes into play with Theresa's disappearance and ultimate murder. It was quite far away. With nobody to keep attendance or track of the students, they were pretty much left on their own, and they truly were. There were interviews done with some of the students at the time of her disappearance, well, slightly after. Media wasn't involved right away. And the students said the same thing, like there's no attendance being taken. One of them said you could literally just, show up for the first day of school and then not show up the rest of the semester, and the faculty wouldn't even know.
What kind of education were they doing there anyways?
They were 16 to 18-year-olds, so it would have been sort of like a high school situation. Everything began to change on November 3rd, 1978, barely 2 months into the semester. So the evening that it happened, Theresa was in the dining hall with her friends, and she had told them that she wanted to go to the library because there was a book report that was due on Monday. And there was a big party or something happening it was party all the time really at the residences, but so she left. So to get from the school to Compton, there were very, very few buses at the time. The bus she was trying to catch was a 6:15 bus. She missed that one. The next bus to get to Compton would have been at about 11 p.m.
It's like a long time to wait for another bus too. 14 kilometers, you might as well walk if you're waiting. What's that, another 5 hours?
It's pretty rural area. Hitchhiking was a big thing back in the day.
Yeah.
And
it was mostly safe.
It was mostly safe, but even the school kind of promoted hitchhiking. They gave them a handbook.
Yeah.
They gave the students a handbook about how to safely hitchhike, which is, you can't even imagine that right now, but it was a thing back then.
It's like what? I wonder what would have been in it.
Well,
like how was to safely hitchhike back in those days?
If I can find an actual digital copy online, I'll try to include it in the video. But pretty much what it says was, look who's in the vehicle before you get in the vehicle, or don't walk in the dark. It was like the whole thing from start to finish. Whether you offer money for the ride, or just how to get out of uncomfortable situations. Like it was a whole handbook. It is possible that Theresa decided to walk. Possibly she had gotten a ride. Regardless, the dining hall was the last time anyone had seen Theresa alive. It's an unsolved case. The possibilities are really endless right now.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, I feel like she was hitchhiking because it was just what the young people did back then. And like you said, I mean, it was fairly safe back then. We couldn't imagine doing it now, but
no.
Yeah, I think she was probably hitchhiking, just got picked up by the wrong person.
Well, that's what I'm thinking too, even if you say she might have decided to walk. I mean, 14 kilometers or 5 hours to wait for a bus.
Monday morning arrived. Theresa didn't show up to class. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. She's nowhere to be found. And the school faculty had not even noticed that she wasn't there because they never took attendance. So, and this was from the mouths of the students themselves.
That's pretty bad too for a school to do that, especially a boarding school. Like the parents are entrusting their kids with the staff there, and then they're just...
Yeah, it's so strange. I just can't even imagine. No, they don't do attendance at the school, and there's nobody to watch these students at the residence. What kind of place was this?
Was there even... what about the teachers even? Were they doing homework? Were they... doing... Well, if they didn't even take attendance, they don't even know who's there or not.
Oh, no, I mean, it was school as usual. It's just that they didn't... It was so casual. I don't know. I don't understand it. I tried to do a little bit of research into the school itself, and I just can't figure it out. It's just bad practices, really. So 6 days after her disappearance, her brother, Andre, who was the one that decided to stay in Quebec with her, asked the college administrator if they could organize a search party, only to be dismissed. He was denied because the administrator did not want to turn the school upside down looking for a missing student. And that was pretty much a quote.
Not worried about looking for them, especially going through the school.
There's just something about this school. I don't know.
Yeah.
How did they ever run it like that?
Well, that was the beginning of a downward spiral of missed opportunities, poor decisions, and neglect by school administration and authorities. School didn't even inform Theresa's parents of her disappearance, and they actually never even heard from the school, not even for years after that.
No, they never, and I mean never, ever, ever again heard from the school. Ever. Not a word about it in all the years.
Yeah, not even during, I was going to say not even during investigations, but...
No, never. Just literally never.
Nothing.
Literally nothing at all. Not a word.
Not even an apology or something,
Yeah, nothing.
Would it be inconsiderate?
Nothing.
So, her parents had actually driven to the college campus to confront the administrator, and the only way that Theresa's mom could describe the administrator was rational. So, she probably just excused it, tried to fluff it off.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. But it gets worse than that.
Yeah. So the administrator deflected their questions and spent the majority of their conversation on a character assassination of their daughter. So, putting her distraught parents in a defensive situation. They were asking them if she was even their blood child, suggesting that she may have had defiance issues, or ran away due to an unwanted pregnancy, or she could have been suicidal.
Yeah, so it shocks me so much that that's their first reaction, is just to say, oh, she's probably just a runaway. Or what they were getting at was what they asked about, if that's your blood child, because they've had adopted students that I guess sort of acted up. So they were asking, is she adopted? Because adopted students tend to do this and that. So it was just, they were trying to find a way to sort of excuse and, like you said, like basically fluff off this situation.
Yeah. So after this, her parents went knocking on all the doors in the local neighborhood, showing her picture to try and find her themselves.
And that's terrible.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Like,
the school just doesn't even care.
Yeah. Yeah.
So eventually, Mr. and Mrs. Allore called the Lennoxville police, who also seemed not interested in investigating the disappearance. They were stating that Theresa would probably pop up anytime, and it's very common for young people. So nobody took her parents seriously at all.
No, and there's the police again. Like I said, I'm not trying to be one of those people that only say horrible things about police, but here we go again.
Yeah, once more.
Yeah, what is with that? What is with that?
Especially, I mean, like in the, 70s, kids and that were getting into drugs and everything. It almost seems like an attitude of where they're just like, well, that's kids these days. Like, if they're going to do stupid things and whatever, like...
Yeah, so what are you there for then? If that's your attitude about, that's kids these days, like, what are they going to say? Somebody robs a bank. Well, that's just, thieves these days. Yeah, they're so useless. And this also gets worse when it comes with dealing with the police.
So an English instructor, Michael Bennison, he felt strongly that the school should have acted immediately upon hearing of the disappearance of Theresa and confronted the administration. He also suggested they should organize a search party with assistance from the police. And according to Bennison, the administration refused.
Yeah, so they even refused one of their colleagues. The heck is this place?
Yeah, someone from the school was actually concerned, and people in charge didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't the college agree to search and make the disappearance public knowledge? Instructor Bennison was informed that the college's reputation would be at stake, as it would make the school come across as unsafe, and it would also expose the lack of proper supervision at the residences in Compton.
Yeah, and he was actually told that by the administrator of the school, that their reputation was at stake, and they weren't willing to risk it. And that's legitimately what he was told.
So weeks and months went by. Rumors suggested that Theresa may be back in Montreal or in the United States somewhere. Lennoxville Police Chief Hamel contacted the Sûreté de Québec, or SQ. That's the Quebec provincial police, kind of like the OPP here in Ontario, about the missing girl. A member of the Sûreté de Québec informed Theresa's parents to stop searching for their daughter and that they're wasting their time and should just go home.
And that was another pretty much direct quote.
Yeah, and as if that wasn't bad enough, they also told them to wait until the spring, when the snow melts, and her body will probably show up.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, that is facts.
That would be hard to hear.
Yeah.
And
that's the way they were treated.
Yeah. So Theresa, it turns out, was not very far at all from the Compton residence. Her body would spend the winter in the water near the wooded area, and nobody knew she was there, as the search party had never even been organized.
So it was the morning of Good Friday when a local muskrat trapper discovered the body of Theresa, only wearing bra and panties, under a bridge in the river 1 kilometer from the college residence. So I guess she didn't make it home. Maybe she did make it home. Like I said, everything's up in the air. It's unsolved and...
hard to say.
Yeah, it's anyone's guess, really. The trapper didn't believe that it was a body at first. He was thinking that it was a mannequin floating. He was saying in an interview, I think it was on W5, It's that's another investigative journalism show in Canada. He was saying that he thought it was a mannequin. That was the first thing he thought, because he said the first thing I wouldn't have thought was that I was going to find a woman's body.
Yeah.
So there is a picture actually accessible to anyone of her body being found. I'm not going to put it in the video. If you're curious, it's out there. It shows quite a lot, so just to give you a warning, it's not for everybody. But I guess I was surprised a little bit to find that picture so accessible to just anyone, because it's a crime scene photo, and we're going to get into that a little bit later on, why there are actual crime scene photos of Theresa Allore online, because I have many. I'm going to put some sprinkled through the video. Where she was found was virtually secluded, even during the day, basically deserted, rural area. In a nearby farmer's field, a scarf was found by police, later identified as a 19th birthday gift to Theresa. So it was identified as her scarf, and it was ripped and torn. So it shows that there was some kind of a struggle.
Yeah, you'd
I'm
wonder,
assuming.
Like, I don't know how close by the farmer's field was, but that would almost suggest maybe she was running away from somebody, or she had tried to get away, then doubled back to the road, maybe.
Some people speculate that it could have been what was used to kill her, possibly. Maybe it was something to tie her up. It was used somehow, anyhow. About a month after that, Theresa's wallet was found in a ditch alongside a country road by a local farmer, 10 kilometers from where her body was found. Yeah, so her stuff is sort of all over the place here. So
it's in a general area, but not all together.
Not all together, but like I was saying earlier, this stretch of road is going to come into play here a few times. So at first the coroner thought they found signs of strangulation. And the coroner did say that it was of their opinion, and it was in the notes of the actual report. But the autopsy report showed no signs of struggle, marks of violence, nor evidence of sexual assault. They assumed there was some kind of violence involved. They called it marks of violence, but it could be anything from falling down a hill and getting like banged up to the extreme of, actually getting assaulted. So
general wounds and
marks of violence, yeah.
Okay.
After 5 months of her body being in the water, medical examiners could not determine exactly how or when her death occurred. It was listed as an undetermined death due to unidentified violence. So basically a big nothing.
Yeah. They were just like, well, I got nothing.
Yeah. Just something weird about this whole entire system. Something about police in Quebec too, because they've always sort of had a reputation of probably being some of the worst in the country. So Chief of Police Hamel retired a long time ago, but he still holds on to the case file of Theresa Allore. He claims out of guilt. He was a young officer at the time and claims he did everything in his power to try to solve this case. I've watched a bit of an interview with him, and I feel for him a little bit, but then I'm thinking, did you really do everything you could do at the time to solve the case? Because the family was just getting sent away.
Yeah. Sure doesn't sound like it.
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, he feels guilty now because he didn't do the right thing, I guess. Or it could have been a thing where he just didn't have power enough to stand up to the people who were, on the force or more in control. So maybe he was had roadblocks himself.
Yeah.
Hamel claims the reason there was no ground search organized upon the disappearance was because he and others were convinced that she was just going to show up. And that was their honest belief.
I mean, I guess, it happens with kids, but you can't just say every kid that disappears, they'll show up.
No, you gotta try.
Yeah.
I mean, that's your job.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. So a search may not have saved Theresa, but early detection would have helped greatly in their investigation. For sure, because somebody got away with it. Evidences may have been overlooked. Yeah. And there's a big conclusion at the end that might be the answer, but it, like I said, all hangs in the balance. But it might have saved other lives, maybe, if they just would have did their job.
Yeah. Then would have been the time to act.
Yeah. So 2 hunters came forward months after the disappearance and claimed they found a neat pile of women's clothing in the woods. So, just like a skirt and shirt or something, or jeans and a shirt just folded up nicely. They found it there the same weekend Theresa disappeared, they think. They weren't 100%, but they said, thinking back, yeah, we saw that pile of clothes.
I wonder why they just held on to that for a couple months, though.
Like, what is wrong with everybody here?
Yeah, everyone's just so flippant about everything. Just like, if it comes up.
Like, I don't get it. Why is everyone so just casual with stuff like this?
Kids disappearing, yeah.
Like, if I saw a pile of clothes in the woods, like, neatly, I'd be like, who does this belong to? Why is this here? And should I call somebody? Or you wouldn't just look at it and be like, oh, normal.
Yeah, I wouldn't just be like, somebody was camping and just accidentally left it behind.
No, it's like literally just alone in the woods.
Yeah.
Just.
Definitely would be suspicious.
Oh, sure. I guess not to them. Police went later to the spot where the hunters said that they saw the pile of clothes and the pile of clothes was gone. So, if these guys would have said something immediately, the police hopefully would have went there right away and, it's Theresa's clothes. A clue. But nobody did anything. It blows my mind.
Well, I was just going to say, maybe it's a case of the clothes were gone. Like, maybe it could have identified as her clothes. Maybe the family would have recognized them and the police were just like, we'll just...
Yeah, I know what you're getting at. I feel like there was, at one point when I was researching the case, I felt like there were some games being played here.
Well, it sure sounds like it. Like, they're more concerned about their reputation than finding this young girl, and that's what I mean. Like, maybe they're like, oh, there's clothes out there? Yeah, we'll go check it out. And then they're just like, nope, didn't find anything.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's weird. Lead investigator for the SQ came up with his own theory. And this is a theory that they're going to hold on to until the end of time. He figured that the residence was having some kind of wild party where possibly students were taking LSD and maybe Theresa overdosed and the students got rid of her body, or she was so drugged up she fell in the river. And that is something that was their stance even up until most recently. It was still their stance that she was drugged up. Yeah, and either she OD'd accidentally, or she just was so drugged up she just fell in the river and drowned. But keep in mind, she was found in the river just in a bra and panties, and her clothes were elsewhere. So there's no way that she's going to be... And it was in the winter. So if she were found fully clothed, I'd be like, oh yeah, it looks like an accident kind of thing. But she's not going to take her clothes off and then... Like, it doesn't make any sense in the winter.
Well, and like, why would the kids, if the kids were to do that, why would they Well, one, undress her and just ditch her, and then...
Yeah, undressing and doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and then just possibly neatly folding her clothes and leaving them in the woods.
10 kilometers away from where her body was.
Yeah.
So that would
take
mean...
a long time as well.
Well, that would mean she would have taken her clothes off 10 kilometers away from where she met her end.
Yeah.
Why would she... And then she walked 10 kilometers to the river.
In the winter. Also. What was it? Well,
it was in the winter.
Yeah.
It was only a couple months after school started in September, right? It was November. So yeah, already winter. There was a party that weekend that she disappeared, but it was determined that she was not there. The students said we did not see her all weekend. And the police, the Lennoxville police, at least got that, which I think that was an obvious one. Like, they didn't have to dig too deep to get that fact.
Yeah.
Her friends say that she did smoke cigarettes and weed, but didn't do any of the harder drugs anyway. She just wasn't into it. Just like, regular stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Even in the 70s, it wasn't for everyone.
No, and I think... there's whatever, do what you want to do, but I think, she was pretty focused on her education, so I don't think she'd go any further than that. Teresa's best friend exclaimed that you couldn't even kiss a boy on a Friday night without everyone hearing about it on a Saturday morning. So there was no way possible that the secret could have been kept.
Well, word spread fast, apparently. So if somebody OD'd, they wouldn't want to tell on each other, so to speak, but I don't think they're all going to have this mass conspiracy where they just keep their mouths shut and that's what happened to that girl. Let's leave it alone.
I don't know. They, the SQ got really sort of into it, and they were even trying to pinpoint some of this, students in particular, some of the male students, and they never did any investigating anyway. They just came up with, here's our theory, and we're sticking to it, and give it up.
Yes.
I would lose it if Theresa were my daughter. I have 2 daughters. If Theresa were my daughter, I would lose it on everybody. I don't know. The Allore family were very patient through this whole thing. Especially her parents.
Yeah.
I would have lost my mind. I probably would have been put in jail. I would have lost it, especially on these cops. I can't even fathom, and I have nothing to do with it, and I can't even fathom why you're just not doing your job.
The school, too, even you'd lose it on,
Oh, the school...
just
especially
more concerned with their reputation than the children that they have attending their school. They don't even care about them attending school.
No. It's just a big weird thing. I have no idea.
Yeah. So what did happen to Theresa? So years and months go by and the Allore family were left with no answers, and they were shamed by the story of the drug overdose. The final word by the SQ being that Theresa caused her own death.
Yeah, and that was really hard on the family because it's like a smaller community, and everybody knew everybody, and the word was that it was a drug overdose, and they didn't want their daughter's
memory to be
shamed.
Yeah.
And they felt ashamed too, as they were the ones left behind to deal with that, but also it was more about just their daughter's reputation. And it was really, really sad. And they went on for that for years, people believing that.
And so eventually Theresa's brothers Andre and John, they grew older, started families of their own, and Theresa's case just went cold. Till one day they decided to do what the police never did, and that was investigate thoroughly. Yeah,
so her brothers took the bull by the horns when they were old enough, and they were both educated too at the time. Actually, I think her brother John was involved in politics even.
So in 1994, her brothers returned to the rural area where Theresa's body had been found, Younger brother John had never been there before, as he was only 14 when his big sister disappeared. They immediately put two and two together while looking at the crime scene. The area was described by the brothers as creepy and isolated, and this is where her body was found. It was a great distance from the road, so it made it quite clear to them that she was the victim of sexual violence and a murder cover-up. Somebody brought her there to do these things to her or hide the body. So during their investigations, John, the youngest brother, he moved his family to Durham in North Carolina. In the spring of 2000, John received a knock on his door, and it was the North Carolina police.
So this is a twist in the situation.
They were looking for the former owner of the house that he had bought. He was a suspect in a disappearance and murder of a local young woman. They wanted to search the property for her body. The woman's name was Deborah Key, and her body had never been found. Now, the police didn't find her body there, but their investigation sparked something in John. He was inspired by the dedication of the North Carolina police in actually trying to solve the case.
Yeah.
So he admitted that it triggered a disappointment and anger in him towards the SQ and how they handled his sister's case.
Yeah, and that would be... Can you imagine? He'd be like, wow, you guys are investigating this right away?
Yeah, actually
wow.
looking for evidence and trying to find this girl.
And it would have been so disappointing. I don't even know what I would feel seeing that, thinking, ugh, how the other ones didn't do their job.
Yeah. So John requested the SQ show him his sister's investigative file. The first thing that John noticed was that back when the case was warm, the SQ prided themselves on the amount of people that they had interviewed during their investigation and their possible suspects. It was about 200 people. John found that 190 of those interviewed were students at the school. Therefore, the SQ made no effort to look outside of the student body, and so they were so attached to their theory of her schoolmates covering up her overdose.
Yeah, so when they did actually make a move, it was lazy. They said, we interviewed 200 people, but it was like mostly all the students, so they didn't have to go too far to do that. And then they just stopped after that, apparently.
Yeah.
So John has the case file for his sister. So he's getting to see all those documents, coroner's report and whatnot.
Yeah, he also received the autopsy reports from 1979 and found out that there were no drugs in Theresa's system at the time. So that would have killed their notion that it was an overdose.
Yeah, but they were the ones that held that file that said that. And yet they went on with the charade, like, we believe this. And they were holding a file in their hand saying that she didn't have drugs in her system.
And it's not like the coroner was afraid to be a narc and was just lying about it. It was right in the report.
Oh, it's weird. Weird stuff.
So John requested the physical evidence, that being her underwear and the torn scarf. The SQ told him that evidence had already been destroyed about 5 years after her body was found. They didn't explain why, and they were even curious why he would even care after so much time.
And they actually said that to him. Why would you care? And they shouldn't have gotten rid of that. Well, I mean, it's kind of like hindsight's 2020. So DNA testing wasn't even around at the time. Had they held on to it for just a little bit longer, there would have been DNA evidence on there that probably would have convicted somebody. But they just got rid of it. And then there's, what do you care?
Yeah, why would you even say that to somebody who's lost their sibling? And again, it was like the way they treated their parents. Just like, don't worry about it. Just let it go. And it's your daughter or your sister. Like, how can you tell somebody that? If
this
it was
is
one
years.
of their families.
Yeah, this is years later too.
Yeah.
John is an adult now, and they're still kind of in. The SQ is still living in the past. Yeah. They're still holding on to their same theory, even though ugh, it's such a mess. I don't get it. I don't understand them.
So they destroyed any possible evidence, and of course, like we were saying, there was no DNA testing back then.
Oh, it's a shame.
But imagine these days if they would have had it,
yeah,
they could have solved the case. And that just shows that the SQ had no intention whatsoever of solving her case.
No,
Didn't even care.
That's obvious, I guess, eh?
Yeah.
So John also combed through old newspapers from the late 70s. And one particular article caught his attention from April 1979. That was the month Theresa's body was discovered. It involved the murder of 10-year-old Manon Dubé. She vanished from the streets of Sherbrooke, Quebec, in January 1978. Her body was found 2 months later, face down in a creek. The article claimed that the SQ declared Manon was a victim of a hit and run, and her body thrown in the creek to cover the accident. So this is something that happened right around the time as Theresa's case, and the SQ are treating this little girl's, you know what, as they're making a whole other theory about it.
Yeah,
what they were saying, that she was hit by a car and the driver went and picked her up off the road and threw her in the creek and just sort of moved on. Like, does that make any sense?
No.
What's wrong with them?
Especially if it's a small community there, like everyone knows each other, chances are somebody would know the child or the parents. It's like they just got an excuse ready for everything. They just, oh yeah, it's probably this. And then...
Yeah, what are they getting paid for?
Yeah.
No, well, it's no secret that they're corrupt. A lot of that happened, especially in Quebec. Not to say it didn't happen in other provinces, but that's another thing they're just well known for, is being corrupt. Not saying that, probably not now. I don't know. Police don't come for us. We like you. Police is such a hot topic, and it kind of always is. They always come in and out of the news, and it's like every so many years they're the thing. And it's still happening, I guess. It has been happening.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know. I know I don't understand these guys.
Yeah.
They're terrible.
Yeah.
So John continued to find articles, another involving Louise Cameron, whose body was found March 1977. She disappeared from the streets of Sherbrooke, Quebec, again. And when she was found, she was brutally murdered and SA'd. Were these cases solved? All 3 cases are unsolved. Were they connected? John found that the woods where the hunters found clothing possibly belonging to Theresa was the same woods where Louise Cameron's body was found. John also discovered that the 16-year-old, and this is weird, 16-year-old daughter of the farmer who found Theresa's wallet was approached by a man, the farmer's daughter, approached by a man in a vehicle along the same road that the other victims were discovered. The 16-year-old ran away from the man who chased her in his car. Police were in the area, they said police just so happened to be there. Caught up with the man, they questioned him and let him go. This happened 1 month before Theresa disappeared.
Yeah, so that right there, and they're not even... the fact that they even dismissed him and just let him go after chasing a young girl down the street, and then girls start showing up missing, or missing and murdered. Like, you'd think they would have put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, they're not. They're just not. That's what I mean. What were they getting paid to do? This country road connects Sherbrooke to Compton and connects all 3 crime scenes. Really, really interesting to see that. Totally makes sense. It's going to make even more sense when the Allore family brings in the next person. So, armed with this information about the road and the connections, the Allore family brought it to the attention of a well-known geographic profiler, an international investigator, Kim Rossmo, a former Vancouver police officer. In 1985, he developed a computer software to determine geographic connections in cases in 1985. This software is still used today by the RCMP, FBI, and Scotland Yard. So that is the man that you want involved. Thank goodness for him, too.
I've never seen this program, but I'm just trying to picture of how that works. So determine geographic connections in cases.
Yeah.
I guess
much like what John was just talking about, where the body was here and the thing happened there and this was found here and it's all along that road. So they're all connected, 3 crimes, right? So that's pretty much what the software is. I guess it's like a sort of a data, you input data and then it's in the database is stored whatever, right?
If you
like if you come across a crime, you would put it into the database and it would say, oh wait, another thing happened here 2 kilometers away from there, same this and that. So that's exactly what it is. So he agreed to get involved in this investigation with the Allore brothers. A persuasive pattern was determined using the 3 cases of Manon, Louise, and Theresa. All 3 bodies dumped in water. All 3 along the same stretch of road and conducted in the same manner. It was determined by Rossmo that these 3 murders gave evidence of serial activity, serial killer or predator in that area at that time. Multiple perpetrators have been identified. The Allore family went public with Kim Rossmo's theory of the serial killer in 2002. Shortly after retired SQ investigator Rock Goodrow went public defending the drug overdose theory. So in 2002, they're still on about this drug overdose theory.
They just won't let it go.
Well, they I guess, not hid it. It was filed away, but it was the brothers' right to obtain those files. So I guess they didn't really think about the day that it was going to end up in somebody else's hands.
Yeah.
Rock Goodrow refuses to speak to anyone about why he still supports the overdose theory. Rossmo also criticizes SQ theories involving the other 2 victims. So, I didn't get too much into that, but they also had, well, we mentioned one of the theories, but they had a few very oddball theories about the other 2 victims that were mentioned.
And it's due to the hard work of the Allore family that pressure is being put on the Sûreté de Quebec to reopen these 3 cold cases. The family feels that they'll never find out exactly what happened to Theresa.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, they don't even have physical evidence anymore. The police got rid of it, so what can they do?
So Champlain College provided a written statement to the investigative report show W5, which you mentioned earlier, claiming that they're looking at it through a different lens.
Yeah, finally. So,
yeah.
I think W5 did that. They did a documentary. It's kind of an old one now. Maybe about 10 years ago. 8 to 10 years ago, possibly. So, and that was just at that time that the college was saying, well, we might have another opinion. Once that got out that they were sort of what was actually happening in the college, I'm sure there were a lot of parents saying, well, I'm not sending my child to you. Why would I give you money?
Yeah. It's probably once it really started damaging their reputation, it's probably when they're like, well,
which is what they were worried about.
Yeah.
And they admitted it, so.
Yeah, exactly. So John Allore's findings, they're documented in a book titled Wish You Were Here, A Murdered Girl and a brother's quest and the hunt for a Canadian serial killer. He details compelling evidence that Theresa was one of many victims murdered by a previously unknown serial killer by the name of Luc Yolande Gregoire. He died in prison in 2015, and he'd only been convicted of one murder. Shortly after finishing the book, a new breakthrough in the case came in the form of a deathbed confession by a local criminal who admitted to killing and dumping the body of a female co-ed in 1978.
Yeah.
The investigation into Theresa's murder remains unsolved and ongoing. In 2017, the cases were officially warm again.
Yeah, after all that time.
So youngest brother John continued through the years advocating for justice for the disappearances of women and children. He had a podcast dedicated to it. Should be available on YouTube. I believe his channel is actually just called John Allore.
Yeah.
So on March 30th this year, 2023, John went out for an early morning bike ride near his home, but he never returned. His body was found on the side of the road after he was hit by a car. He was 59 this year. A 26-year-old woman is being charged with speeding and causing death with a vehicle in connection with the accident.
Yeah, what a thing to happen to the poor guy.
After dedicating his life to finding out what happened to his sister.
And what a weird one. Like this one, even when I was sort of finding notes and doing research, I was just, to myself, I was like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Why didn't they do this? Like, it is ridiculously sad. I think that's the only way I can explain it.
Yeah, there's just no excusing their lack of even interest.
It's like they just threw these theories out there and everyone was supposed to take it. And for the most part, people did take it. Which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
I mean, these aren't the... it can't be only these 3 cases that were like that. I think these police have been doing it all along with everybody. I just think there's something like deeply internally wrong there. Not to say it's like that anymore, but back in the day, definitely. Definitely. Because this is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely. Poor girl. We'll keep an eye on it as much as possible. Like I said, there's not too much out there about it at the moment, especially since John is no longer with us, so there isn't really the podcast anymore.
So who knows what's going to happen now that he's passed on.
Yeah, hopefully there's still people out there that are sort of committed to getting to the bottom of it because, I mean, since he's gone, there's very little family left. Is it even going to be, an interest or a priority anymore? So we will see what happens, and we'll definitely let you know if we hear anything about it. There are a lot of cases like this in Canada, and I think we're going to do more of this sort of podcast. Maybe not every single podcast, but a good majority of them, because the issue right now is missing women and children. The issue of missing women, in particular Indigenous women, should still be a big deal.
Should be a little more light shed on these cases.
I think so. These women were ignored. Their disappearance was ignored. And it's right across Canada. And it should not be happening in Canada. Should have never happened.
Everyone's important to someone, so...
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into that every now and again. So thank you very much for watching.
Thank you, guys.
And we will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.